Exodus chapter 21.
Exodus 21. Now these are the judgments which thou shalt set before them. If thou abide in Hebrew serving, 6 years he shall serve, and in the 7th he shall go out free for nothing. If he came in by himself, he shall go out by himself. If he were married, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master have given him a wife, and she have borne him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's, and he shall go out by himself. And if the servant shall plainly say, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free, then his master shall bring him unto the judges, and he shall also bring him to the door and unto the doorpost, and his master shall bore his ear through with an awl, and he shall serve him forever. And if a man sell his daughter to be a maidservant, she shall not go out as the maidservants do, as the men servants do. If she please not her master, who hath betrothed her to himself, then shall he let her be redeemed, to sell her unto a strange nation. He shall have no power, seeing he hath dealt deceitfully with her. And if he have betrothed her unto his son, he shall deal with her after the manner of daughters. If he take him another wife, her food, her raiment, her duty of marriage shall he not diminish. And if he do not these three unto her, then shall she go out free without money. He that sinneth smiteth a man, so that he die, shall be surely put to death. And if a man lie not in wait, but Elohim deliver him into his hand, then I will appoint thee a place whither he shall flee. But if a man come presumptuously upon his neighbor to slay him with guile, thou shalt take him from mine altar, that he may die. And he that smiteth his father or his mother shall be surely put to death. He that stealeth a man and selleth him, or if he be found in his hand, he shall surely be put to death. And he that causes his father or his mother curses his father or his mother, shall surely be put to death. And if men strive together, and one smite another with his stone, or with his fist, and he die not, but keepeth his bed, if he rise again and walk abroad upon his staff, then shall he that smote him be quiet. Only he shall pay for the loss of his time, and shall cause him to be thoroughly healed. And if a man smite his servant or his maid with a rod, and he die under his hand, he shall surely be punished. Notwithstanding, if he continue a day or two, he shall not be punished, for he is his money. If men strive and hurt a woman with child, so that her fruit depart from her, and yet no mischief follows, he shall be surely punished, according as the woman's husband will lay upon him, and he shall pay as the judges determine. And if any mischief follow, then thou shalt give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burning for burning, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. And if a man smite the eye of his servant, or the eye of his maid, that it perish, he shall let him go free for his eye's sake. And if he smite out his manservant's tooth, or his maidservant's tooth, he shall let him go free for his tooth's sake. If an ox gore a man or a woman that they die, then the ox shall be surely stoned, and the flesh shall not be eaten, but the owner of the ox shall be quiet. But if the ox were wont to push with his horn in time past, and it had been testified to his owner, and he had not kept him in, but that he had killed a man or a woman, the ox shall be stoned, and his owner also shall be put to death. If there be laid on him a sum of money, then he shall give for the ransom of his life whatsoever is laid upon him, whether he have gored a son or have gored a daughter, according to this judgment shall it be done unto him. If the ox shall push a manservant or a maidservant, he shall give unto their master 30 shekels of silver, and the ox shall be stoned. And if a man shall open the pit, or if a man shall dig a pit and not cover it, and an ox or an ass fall therein, the owner of the pit shall make it good and give money unto the owner of them, and the dead beast shall be his. And if one man's ox hurt another's, that he die, then they shall sell the live ox and divide the money of it, and the dead ox also they shall divide. Or if it be known that the ox hath used to push in time past, and his owner hath not kept him in, he shall surely pay ox for ox, and the dead shall be his own. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. The law of Yah is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of Yah is pure, converting the simple, making wise the simple. All right, family, we're going to go ahead. We're going to get started with the praise and worship. If the Most High has been good to you, then shout hallelujah. 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 We're going to turn it over to our praise and worship team.
Praise God.
Hallelujah. Bless him. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Our hallelujahs and our praise belong unto you, Yahuwah. We worship you because you are holy, you are worthy, and you are righteous. The Almighty Creator. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. You are worthy, 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 so. You are worthy, 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 You are worthy, 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 so. Yahuwah, your love has freed us. 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 Your love has freed us. Yahuwah, your love has freed us. Yahuwah, your love has freed us. 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 Oh, bless you. Oh, bless you. Worthy, 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 so. Hallelujah. You are worthy, 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 You are worthy, 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 so. You are holy. You are holy, 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 You are holy, 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 Hallelujah. Hallelujah. You are so holy, You are so holy, You are holy, You are holy. You are worthy. Oh, we bless thee. Oh, you're holy. Oh, you're holy. You're so holy, You're so holy, You're so holy, You're so holy, Oh, you're so worthy, You're so worthy, You're so worthy, Oh, hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. My hallelujah belongs to you. My hallelujah belongs to you. My hallelujah belongs to Thank you, Yah.
Our hallelujah only belongs to you, oh Yah. It only belongs to you, oh Yah. How many times have we praised things that did not deserve our praise? Therefore, we only deserve our purest praise for you, oh Yah. You are our King of Kings. You are our Creator, the Sovereign of the universe. Father, we praised and we jumped for sports teams, at concerts for people singing wickedness and debauchery. But Father, how much more should we reserve our hallelujah for you, oh God? For you, oh God. You and for me, Father, we repent for our ancestors. They had the culture, they had the language, oh Yah, but they still said, give us Barabbas. Return from those ways back to you, oh Yah, in sincerity and in truth. We lift our hands, oh Yah, because we don't hold anything from you. Our lives are able to be examined by you, oh Yah, because we love you and we want to please you with our every endeavor. So much, oh Yah. Let the words of our mouth and the meditation of our heart be acceptable in your sight. Oh Yah, our strength and our Redeemer. Shout hallelujah! Worthy, family. He's so worthy. I love him like that. When you know where you came from, everything that you've been through, the scripture says, he that little is forgiven loves a little. I know he forgave me for so much and did so much for me, therefore I love him a lot today. But we're going to go forward with the teaching. Our brother Lanier Israel, phenomenal voice in Israel. We're going to invite him up and come on up and share what he has, what the Most High put on his heart. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Test these microphones. Testing. All right, I think we're good with this one. Test my clicker. All right, what a week we've had. What a week we had. We've had the Mueller report. We've had conspiracy revealed in one of the greatest nations today, right? And it's a sign of the times that we're in. But as great as the Mueller report is, as your history is greater than that.
That's right.
Like the story behind who you are, where you came from, is greater than that. And what I've learned is that as a so-called, African American, or if you're in a different country, but if you're part of the transatlantic slave trade, one of the things that was taken from us was our heritage. And if you were here last week, last Shabbat, and Morey talked about heritage, so we're just going to kind of continue along that topic. However, this topic is going to be a little bit different, where we're going to talk about history. So we're going to go into history, and I'm going to need your help because we're going to I'm gonna call on you to read some scriptures, because we're gonna go to your favorite scriptures. Not my favorite scriptures, your favorite scriptures. So make sure you have your Bible handy. So I'm gonna take you back. I'm not sure, are anyone new to the, being awakening, being an Israelite to your history? New? When I say new, like within the last year or two. Oh wow, quite a few hands. Okay, and for those that have been in longer, was it 8 years? Anyone been here in the truth for 8 years? I see a couple of you heads. All right, I know when I became aware, it was I want to say 2016. So I still consider myself relatively new to the walk. And when you came into the truth. And this is for the benefit for those that are just waking up, just figuring out who we are, trying to figure out what to do, who to talk to, how to walk, what days I need to observe, and what fellowships I need to join. For those of you, we do want to impart some words of wisdom to you. And so we have a lot of brothers and sisters that have been in this walk for a long time. And I'm going to take us back to day one. So day one, you just came into the truth, and you've already saw the slide. I'm an Israelite! Hallelujah! I'm an Israelite! And so what did you do? Did you talk to somebody? Did you pick up a phone? Did you jump on YouTube, try to digest as many YouTube videos as you could? Did you go and buy a Hebrew Bible?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Try to convert everybody.
What you do, brother?
I tried to convert everybody. Try to get them to see what I saw, but it don't work like that.
Anyone else have a first-hand testimony of what happened? You became an Israelite. You picked up the phone. You tried to tell somebody, maybe your mom. Those folks that are close to you. Anybody get cursed out? Uh-oh, I see a couple of hands go up.
They think you're crazy.
So you're in the cult.
Oh, so I got a slide for that too. Thank you.
Well, the first thing I did was clean my refrigerator of all the swine that was in there.
Anyone else? Did you do anything? Did you call somebody? Did you go out and change your clothes, go out and buy some garments?
I called my non-denominational pastor and asked him why he hid this truth from me.
Burn. That's true. That's one of the things that people go through. Is like you feel betrayed. First you're excited, right? You're excited. I'm Israelite, but then you start thinking, well, how come my pastor didn't tell me? Say it again, sister. Yeah, I mean, you start realizing things, start putting the pieces together, and you're happy, then you're angry because you feel that people have been lying to you, and there's a big cover-up and all this other stuff. So one of the things you start doing is you start diving into history. But most of us, we go and try to tell family and friends, and this is what happens. All right, so won't you come with me? I need to read you your Gentile rights. You got the right to remain a Gentile. Anything you say and do, it won't be held against you because you're under grace. You got the right to meet on Sundays. Let's put that Hebrew Israelite stuff down. All right, but no, I'm an Israelite. I've read it. It's spoken to my heart. It's in my spirit. I know who I am. I've saw some videos. I don't know if you guys ever saw Drawback Jacob's videos. Yeah. It was a brother. You watched him? You watched him? He woke up a lot of people. I mean, a lot. He was one of the first ones that I got a hold of. Yeah, and challenged me to do some more research.
White Out.
Was it White Out?
White Out one. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Who's that? Watchmen and Board? Okay. Yeah. White Out was a good one. Any other good videos that's kind of pulled you over to the other side? That convinced you that after you watched it, you say, don't say hidden Hebrews now. But you watched it and you say, okay. I know who I am. Anyone? All right. Got a few hands. Let's see if it's the same video or it's different. Don't say hidden Hebrews.
No. It was Stephen Darby, Negro Land.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes. Yeah. He was. Yeah. That was out for a couple of years too. I want to say 2016 or even more, probably earlier than that. 13. Same one. So which videos, what YouTubes?
There was one called Hebrew. It was almost like Hebrew Heritage. Obadiah. Obadiah.
All right, that's one. I hadn't heard of that one. I have heard of Darby's because I used to check his out quite a bit too. So any other videos?
Kendall Shoulders.
Kendall Shoulders?
Yeah, explaining like when he's on a worm, on a total worm, he
Okay.
explains that. Kendall Shoulders.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't seen that one. You have another one?
Yeah,
There's one more?
I was a documentary, something about who are the Hebrew Israelites back then, and they're still black today. Something.
Okay. Yeah, I know there's quite a few good documentaries out there, and people, there's a lot of research, a lot of time and effort that are put behind these documentaries. So praise the Most High if these documentaries have helped pull you over to the other side as far as who you are. But when you come into the truth, and this is specifically for those of us that are new to the faith, we want to kind of warn you of a few things. So up front, you're going to be excited. You're going to want to tell family. And they're going to think you're crazy, right? And you may get some pushback. And I don't know if you all got a chance to catch Moray Josh's Wednesday night.
Yeah.
You did? Service?
He that has an ear.
He that has an ear, let him hear. And can you share with us what the lesson learned from he that has an ear to let him hear? What did you get out of it?
It's basically, it's rigged. Those who are meant to hear will hear you, and those who are not, it's going to just fall.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. In other words, he gave the example of Mashiach. So Mashiach dropped the truth. He didn't debate with him. You didn't see him debating, doing battle script like you don't see on the side of the street, on the street. He would drop the truth and keep on rolling. Right? And just like my sister said, for those that are ordained for it to resonate and awaken, it'll awaken. Because I can testify to that because my wife can vouch for it as far as me and my cousin, we recently had a meeting. And so we met for brunch. And we're discussing, going back and forth with, scriptures and stuff like that, the law's done away with. No, it's not. Here's some scriptures that say the laws are still in place. And as we're leaving, and, we just kind of got on some side talk, and she said, yeah, you know what, I was talking to my pastor, and I didn't bring it up. She said, I was talking to my pastor, because I was reading this, because I read scriptures now. I read scriptures. And when I read it, she said, I couldn't help but think that we were the children of Israel. Right? Because the things they went through, the curses that they did, that looked like us. I thought it was us. I didn't know what to say. Because I had been pushing videos across like all family members, you know what I mean? Because I just knew that not everybody was going to take it. I can tell you so when I first came into the faith, I can tell you it was Christmas. I was still observing some of these pagan days, still doing Christmas. But you know what? I'm going to wake up everybody in my family. So, have you ever heard of Brother Ron Dalton, Hebrews and Negroes? Okay. So he has a couple of books that are out. So I had about, I don't know, $400 or whatever. But Ron Dalton had it was a Kindle book. So I went out and got it. However many Kindle books I could purchase with the money that I had. Flooded my family. Indiana, Chicago, Florida. Just sent it all. I was like, I'm going to make it. Everybody's going, they're going to get this word. They're going to learn who they are. I'm going to then turn around and hit them with some videos. Oh, it's going to be on. And so I pressed the button, and I was going to give it a couple of days, let it marinate, let them, get it and open it up and flip through it and stuff like that, A couple of days went by, nothing happened, nobody called. A week went by, nobody called. I didn't say thank you for sending me a book for Christmas. Y'all did Christmas. Week, months, year. To this day, no one has called me back. No one has called me back. But that's why I appreciate Morris like Josh and Morris like Mo and Morris like Amir, because they put it into perspective. It's like, he has a ear, let him hear. And the awakening will happen in their own time, right? It won't be because of me, it'll be because of the Most High.
Right.
All right, so I'm just going to kind of advance through some of these slides, and I do want to apologize up front because that's my sister. I said I have a slide for you because this is what they want to put you in. He said, "Oh no, I'm an Israelite." No, you don't know what you're talking about. When I Google Israelite, I don't see people that look like you. I see people that look like other people. So you're crazy, right? But maybe you want to bounce script, maybe you want to drop some scriptures on it, and this is where I'm going to need your help. So when you try to convert or try to convince someone as to their heritage, who they are, we are the people of the book. All right, what scriptures do you use?
Deuteronomy 28.
Oh, Deuteronomy 28. All right, give me some more scriptures.
Jeremiah 17:4.
Jeremiah
17:4.
You got your Bible? If you got your Bible, open it up so we'll kind of run through some of these, and just so that you can hear the scriptures yourself, right? So let me just throwing out some book and verse. So just turn to your favorite scripture for convincing folks, family members, friends, strangers that we are the children of Israel.
I would always, usually if they're Christian and they believe in Jesus or the Messiah, I will take them to Luke 21:24, and it says, and they shall fall. He was referring to like the end times, the prophecy, because they believe in like the end times prophecy, where the Messiah said, and they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. And they'll say, yeah. And so my question to them after they read that, in the last 2,000 years, since the Messiah gave that prophecy, what people do you know went into slavery into all nations? Not just Europe, all nations. And then show them that they got there by slave ship. They just, if that's what you believe. That's true.
People went into slavery too.
Yeah.
When Abraham, when Yahuwah had spoke to Abraham, he had already told him back in the Old Testament, he said, Genesis 15:13-14, and he said to Abram, know of a surety that thy seed should be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and should serve them, and they should afflict them for 400 years, and also that nations whom they should serve will I judge, and afterwards shall I come out with great sustenance.
Hallelujah. Anyone else have any favorite scriptures that you want to read to tell family, convince them that we are the children of Israel?
Jeremiah 17:4. And thou even thyself shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in the land which thou knowest not. For ye have kindled a fire in mine anger, which shall burn forever.
Hallelujah. So any other scriptures? And if you're new to the walk, you definitely want to write some of these scriptures down, because they'll at least, we're not about backing folks into a corner, not into hitting them over the head with the scriptures and making them feel guilty, right? It's really showing them the scriptures, letting them see it with their own eyes, read it in their own time, and letting the Ruach speak to them.
Joel chapter 3 verses 5-8. Because ye have taken my silver and my gold, and have carried into your temples my goodly pleasant things. The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold unto the Grecians, that ye might remove them far from their border. Behold, I will raise them out of the place whither ye have sold them, and will return your recompense upon your own head. And I will sell your sons and daughters into the hand of the children of Judah, and they shall sell them to the Sabaeans, to a people far off, for the Lord hath spoken it.
Those are some great scriptures. Any last scriptures before we move on? Okay, one more.
Ezekiel 37 chapter about the dry bones.
Oh, brother, I have to slide about that. Because Ezekiel is that's it. I mean, all the scriptures are great, but Ezekiel is a great scripture as well. All right, so let's kind of progress here. So we review some of the Bible scriptures that we can use just to share with family and friends that, hey, we are the children of Israel, and you drop the seed and you let it marinate, and so they go and pray about it, and the Holy Spirit pricks them in their heart, and you know what? They start having these thoughts like, that might be true. There might be some truth to it. Let me go back and ask my brother and sister, my nephew, my uncle, about this Israel thing, and you show them the Bible verses, and it's like, okay, and then they say, that's in your interpretation. So, you may need some additional references to help prove your point, because to their point, everything that we've learned in our public schools, they tell us that we're African Americans. They never tell us that we're the children of Israel. So you can see where their mindset comes from, and I call it the Black History Playbook. So when I mean by the Black History Playbook, whenever your history is taught, there are three things that are always withheld from your history, and this might be a bit of a review for some of us, but just know that there are three things that are always withheld from our history, and this is why our history abruptly starts during the transatlantic slave trade. It's because there are other pieces of our history that if you plug them in, you'll start to be able to go back further in history. So the playbook for Black history includes these three things, and it's always executed every single time flawlessly. Number one, never ever mention that the Spanish and Portuguese Jews are black. Never mention it. Because it's important, because remember, Spain and Portugal kicked off the transatlantic slave trade. So if you found out that there were some black Jews in Spain, a lot of them, just before the transatlantic slave trade, you might start asking questions. And then that goes along hand in hand with the second one, which is never mention that the Spanish and Portuguese Jews expelled the Jews to Africa. I actually have a video where if y'all are willing, if we have time, there's an Ashkenazi professor, and he teaches a class or a course on Sephardic Judaism, right? On the Spanish Jews, the history, what happened, where did they come from? And in this video, I believe it's like his introduction to his course. It's a college course. And he tells them what we're going to do. So, day one, week one, we're going to do this. Week two, we're going to do this. And then we're going to talk about the diaspora of the Jews from Spain and Portugal. And we're going to talk about the Jews going into France. And we're going to talk about the Jews fleeing into Italy. And we're going to talk about the Jews fleeing into Germany. The end. That's it. So you'll see that it's very simple, the way that our history has been taught to us. So they always leave out the fact, and we're going to read a few references here just to show you that these are not my words. I have to kind of remind folks of that. These are not my words that we're going to read. We're going to read actually books that were written well before any of us were around. Right? And then the last thing that is always withheld from our history is the history of the Inquisition. That is key. And even today, I don't think we've really kind of delved into the Inquisition enough just to show that the Inquisition was there. And what I mean by that is that we're going to read some references to show that, of course, you've heard of the Spanish Inquisition. So we're starting in Spain, and we're going to see that in Spain there were black Jews. So Spanish Inquisition, black Jews. Then we're going to see that the Jews were kicked out of Spain and they moved over into Portugal. You're going to see that in Portugal. The Inquisition started in Portugal. Then you're going to see that the Jews were kicked out of Portugal, came over to West Coast of Africa. And this is the point that very few folks know. And actually, it shows that for the most part, the Jews were sent to Sao Tome, which is an island off the West Coast of Africa, and other places on the West Coast of Africa. But you'll see that the Inquisition shows up in Sao Tome. They actually have an office in Sao Tome. So you had to wonder, so why would there be an Inquisition office in West Africa. And there's some references that go to talk about the authority, like the headquarters was in Sao Tome, but his dominion was the west coast of Africa. And you may be wondering, all right, so why is that important? Why am I worried about the Spanish Inquisition? Well, one of the examples I gave at a conference in Fort Lauderdale was if you walked in this room and you saw a bunch of firefighters all geared up, had the respirator mask on, and they were, walking around, the first thing that would come to mind, there must have been a fire or something in here. Or if you walked in here and you saw a bunch of police officers all geared up, they had the riot gear on, they had the clubs and all this stuff. First thing you would think, oh, something must have went down, there must have been some disorder going on. Or the exact same thought process has to occur to you when you think about the Inquisition. The Inquisition shows up when there are Jews, or people that were Jews, that they're teaching to be Christians. That's their MO. They show up when they're Jews, and they're teaching them to be Christians, and they're referred to as new Christians. That's the whole point of the Inquisition showing up. So when you see an Inquisition on the west coast of Africa, you gotta wonder, okay, well, there should be some Jews over there if they're over there. Or if there's a firefighter over there, there might be a fire over there. But then, like I was saying before, so the Jews were in Spain, kicked out of Spain, came over to Portugal, got kicked out of Portugal, came over to west coast of Africa, and in each of those 3 steps, the Inquisition had an office, right? Then, transatlantic slave trade kicks off, ships our forefathers across the waters over to the Americas, Central and South America. Some of the first landing spots. The Inquisition shows up in South America, right? Like I said, it's following. It follows us around. And then you may be thinking, well, I mean, in the United States, we haven't had any Inquisitions. I can tell you that for sure. I don't remember seeing an Inquisition office in America. Oh, the church. Well, one of the things you have to know is how the Inquisition operated, and like we were talking about the uniforms, firefighters and the police officers. You got to know what uniforms they wore. And what I like to bring out in one of these videos, we're actually going to read it instead of me just telling you. But you're going to see that the Grand Inquisitor, he was the dude that was there from the beginning. Like when they would so the whole point, just a synopsis of the Inquisition. The Inquisition would show up when there were Jews pretending to be Christians, so they would persecute them, they would take them, and then they would usually take them in these underground caverns, torture them, try to get them to come off the law, statutes, and commandments. And all the while, there would be a bishop showing up every now and then and say, oh, you ready to throw those laws away? Make the Pope your man? They would say no, say, all right, I'll see you in a little bit. And the torturers would come in and start torturing them. Me and some of the brothers was just kind of talking about some of those tools that they use. And you would be surprised of how many of our forefathers would not relent. No matter, and when we talk about some of the tortures that they went through, you don't want to know. I mean, some of that stuff I don't even bring up, right? There was to the point that the Inquisition was strictly meant for the Jews. There was a torture device called the Chair of Judah.
Wow.
The Chair of Judah in the Inquisition. And this is, you can only share so much of that stuff because it is a very, very dark history. All right. But as I was saying on my thought process as far as the Inquisition and knowing the uniforms, the Grand Inquisitor was there from the beginning. So Grand Inquisitor, when they were being tortured, he had his big chair, and he was sitting there saying, just a little bit more. He can take it.
Yeah.
All right, let's do that. Okay, let's go and talk to him. Grand Inquisitor was there from the beginning. And the way that the Grand Inquisitor dressed, he would usually dress in all white. He would usually have a cowl to cover his face. And he would have 2 holes where his eyes would be. Where his hat was, it would be a cone hat. And of course, this should be drawing up some memories, right, for us so-called African Americans. But that was the uniform of the Inquisitor, right? And then it doesn't stop there. If you're familiar with how the Inquisitor executed their people, so back over in Europe, in Spain and Portugal, what they would do is after they've tortured their victims, the victims would not come off the law, statutes, and commandments. Then they had reached the point where they were condemned to die at the auto de fe. Auto de fe is just, they would burn them at the stake. So during the day of the auto de fe, it was always held on a Sunday. It was either held in the church or it was held at the city square. So they would march the victims from their jail cell, wherever they were being held, and it would be a long procession. And the people in the procession, they would have a torch, and they would have a long, solemn march to where the altar de fe was, or where the execution was to be carried out. So if you think about back to where the KKK or the Ku Klux Klan, how they operated back in the early 90s, if you don't know, they would line up in a line, they would have a torch, and they would march in a solemn assembly to the place where they were going to execute somebody. And then once they got there, this is where you'll still see the comparisons. The Inquisition, what they would do is if the person would relent and say, okay, I'll reconcile with the church, but they were still going to get burned, but they would be shown mercy, and this mercy was for them to be humped. They would be choked or gagged. And so the same thing with the KKK. They would show up, and if you don't know, they would have nooses. So they would hang their victims, so they would choke them, just like the Inquisition. Then they would burn them, just like the Inquisition would burn them. But because we're not aware of the history of the Inquisition, we don't pick up on that. When we see the Ku Klux Klan, we don't ask ourselves, well, why are they dressed like that? Like out of all the uniforms they could have picked out, they picked out the ones that persecuted the Jews. Like the Inquisition persecuted the Jews. So why are they dressing up like the people that persecute the Jews and showing up in black neighborhoods? Again, we don't know our history, and that's why a lot of things that you would say that are quintessential so-called African American, they're actually tied back to the Jews. So the Ku Klux Klan is one, but let's see if we can go through some of these slides. Now, if you were to go into Google today and like I said, you shared with your families that, hey, we're the Jews, we're it. We are the children of Israel. And, at least you got to the point where they're curious. So they jump on Google, they type in Sephardic Jew or Spanish Jew. This is what'll show up, this is what'll pop up. And so the question is that correct? No. Nope. And I mean, it's not like it's just one place. I mean, this is like, you type it in, you go page to page in your Google search results. You're not going to see black people at all. So the way, if you get to this point, one of the things I recommend doing is just showing them the description of the Jews according to the old references, before the Ashkenazis got a hold of the printing press in the early 1900s. So when you open up a book and it has that publication date, look for references that have a publication date of the 1800s or older. And if you do that, you'll start to run into references like this. Like, for instance, this is a reference from 1851. And I'm just going to read some of it here. If you start at the top, it says, "Thus the Jews are a people who have ever, according to the prophecy, dwelt alone without intermixing with the nations to this day. Now this separate race all descended from brown ancestors. For Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob must have been as dark as Mar Yohanan, if not darker, exhibit every shade of color from the black Jews of Malabar, or whom we have such an interesting account by Dr. Claus Buchanan, to the rosy and lily complexion of the Jews on the banks of the Elbe. We need go no further than the Jews of southern Spain." So now we're talking about Spain again. And it says, "and compare them with those of Holland and North Germany to perceive a very striking difference. The Spanish Jew is always dark complexion. Always. So if there are always dark complexion, who's he?" You start to see things don't actually line up. And I gotta apologize. I mean, I know if you've kind of watched some of this on the video, it's going to be a repeat. And I didn't catch that until this morning. I was like, you know what? I should start recycling, putting new references in here. Because I got a bunch of references for the Spanish too, but these are my favorite because they kind of go straight to the point. But I think I need to start to put some new ones in there. Oh, previous slide. Yeah. Oh, the reference. Sorry. Yeah, I was going to say, don't necessarily worry about the reference because I do have like videos out there where the references are there. I can also give you a website where you can find most of these references as well. So don't worry about having to copy these down. But if you want to take a screenshot, fine. I'm not sure if it'll show up. Okay. All right. So just to kind of show you some of these references that just prove the point that if you use the old references before the Ashkenazi took over the printing press in the early 1900s, that they say something totally different. Totally different. So here's another one. This one's in, oops, sorry, kind of clicking through. This one's in, that one's in 1829. Let's skip that one. This one's in, I have 1749. So 1749. And on this page it says, "'Tis also a vulgar error that the Jews are all black. For this is only true of the Portuguese Jews." I tell people, so what is only true of the Portuguese Jews? That they're all black. Right? Isn't that different than what we've been taught in our public schools? And it goes on, it even explains why. It says, "Who marry always among one another, beget children like themselves. And consequently, the swarthiness of their complexion is a tale upon their whole race, even in the northern region." So basically, they're saying that the reason why they're dark is because they only marry within their own race.
What's the name of this book here?
This one was A New Voyage to Italy, Volume 2, Part 1. Hey, Rita, do you have a bottle of water with you? Yeah. Okay, I was a little short on my water today. There you go, brother. Thank you, brother. Yeah, I did a conference one day and I didn't have any water. Woo. That's a problem. All right, bear with me just for a second. Just going to advance. All right, so, and this is another one here. Sorry, I know I'm clicking through. But this one's called A Tribute for the Negro. And I can't see the date on that one. But I know it's at least older than 1800s or older. And this one's a good one. And like I said, it might be a bit of a review for those that have seen the video. But for those of us that are new to who we are, again, these are books that you can pull out, share with family if they're curious. Like I said, if they're curious and they want to learn more about who we are, and to help prove your point that, hey, it's not me just saying it, they said it. They said we're, the Jews are black. I didn't say it. But they said, "As I tentatively surveyed the Jewish population on the streets of London, I fancy I could perceive 3 different casts of features. The first feature, Jewish, par excellence, never to be mistaken." Then it talks about the second. The second is a Rembrandt tribute. But I'm going to continue reading about the first one. And the first one's a little bit down further. It says, "Of the first form, I need say little to you, begging you merely to recollect, or to remember, that the contours convex, the eyes long and fine, the outer angles running towards the temples, and the brow of the nose apt to form a single convex line. The nose comparatively narrow," these are being very descriptive of the way they look, right? "The eyes long and fine, the outer angles running towards the temples, the brow and nose apt to form a single convex line. The nose comparatively narrow at the base, the eyes consequently approaching each other, lips very full, mouth projecting, chin small, and the whole physiognomy, or the way they look, when swarthy," and swarthy means black, so when black, "has an African look." So this speaks to the way that they look. And sometimes you'll have people that'll say, okay. All right, so they had a little bit of tan, saying they was a little dark. But olive, there you go. But if you go to a grocery store, what color are olives? Black and green. Black and green. Okay, so actually they're telling the truth. All right, cool. But like I said, this reference is a good one just to show you how the Jews looked, right? And this is another one. I usually throw this one in there, but like I said, I think going forward, I'm gonna start rotating some of these. But Hugh Clapperton went to the west coast of Africa. You know, he visited the west coast of Africa, and as he's going along, he's making a note or he's a journal of what he's doing, what people are saying. And I want to say in June, he came across a sheik, and he wrote down the interaction between him and the sheik. And I'm going to pick it up. You may not be able to see it. Let me see if my highlighter works. What it says? You are not Jews. So this is the sheik asking Clapperton. He's asking Clapperton, you are not Jews, said he. No, said I. Christian then. Even so. So sheik asks Clapperton, are you Jews? Clapperton says no. And he says, Christian. Clapperton says, even so, which means yes. So then he goes on and says, I have read of you. You are better than Jews, said he. Are Jews white like you? No,
Wow.
replied I. See how the mindset's different? No, replied I. Rather more like yourself.
Very dark.
Very dark. So he's talking to an African sheik, and he said the Jews are very dark. And this comes from Narrative Travels and Discoveries of Northern and Central Africa. But I think if you put like Hugh Clapperton in there, it'll, you know how Google helps you out when you type in partial searches. And I'll pause here so you can, if you want to take pictures and see if you can look it up yourself, that's fine. Okay. I'm going to try not to sniffle enough because allergies are getting to me. So bear with me. Okay, so here's another one. Let's see, which one is this? This one's Sources of History. And you'll see it there, 1882. I want to see, try to take a picture of that one. Again, I don't know if you can see it or not, but 1882, Princeton, and this is Princeton University in their seminary. And that's I truly believe that a lot of this truth is already known. I mean, because a lot of these books, like when I try to find some of these books, it'll tell me that the books are in universities like, Princeton University and all this other stuff. But it'll also tell you that the books are in seminary schools. Let's see what this one has to say. It says, thus the black color is found not only in individuals as the black Jews of Portugal. Right? Black Jews of Portugal. I won't read the rest of that. But again, the point I just want to make here is that back in the 1800s, 1700s, 1600s onwards, you'll see that the understanding was that the Jews were black, especially the Spanish and the Portuguese Jews. And I will take some time to explain too, because I was talking to my mom about this because she was asking me. She was like, "Well, because I got Jewish friends, and they know about this stuff. So how do they play in this?" And so I had to explain that there are different types of Jews. If you guys ever come across King Herod in the Bible, between was it Malachi and Matthew, you'll see that there's a history that's like never going over in the church. But at that time, the Idumeans were converted over to Judaism, or became a Jew. And not only that, you also have the Khazars. So the Khazars at some point in time converted. And I'm sure I'm forgetting about some other conversions along the way. But the main thing is just to know that there were some converts that were brought in. So it's when you're going through these references, you have to kind of keep that in mind, because you want to know which group of Jews is speaking to, referring to. And for this reference, this is a reference by Baruch Spinoza. He's actually a Jew himself, and he's going to describe himself. And in his description, he says, he was of a middle size, he had good features in his face, the skin somewhat black. Black curly hair, long eyebrows, and of the same color, so that one might easily know by his looks that he was descended from Portuguese Jews. And one of the points I try to make, especially when I bring this one out, was that the way people consider the Jews, like when they saw a black person with curly hair, they thought he was a Portuguese Jew. That's the first thing that popped up. Oh, you're a Portuguese Spanish Jew, right? And you may see it in some of these subsequent references. But I threw this reference in here. I believe this one describes some of the Jews that live by the Jordan. And it goes on, it says, with the reference to the characteristic of color, which are extreme, we have now opportunity of knowing how much that the character is the result of the influence of climate. So they thought climate controlled whether your color. And it says, we know it more peculiarly, you know what I'm saying, particularly, by that most valuable mode of testing. I know it's kind of wordy, bear with me. It says, for 1,800 years, that race has been dispersed in different latitudes and climates, and they have preserved themselves distinct from intermixture with other races of mankind. There are some Jews still lingering in the valley of the Jordan, having been oppressed by the successive conquerors of Syria for ages. A low race of people, and described by trustworthy travelers as being as black as any of the Ethiopian races. So again, different understanding of what the Jews looked like back in that day. And I'm going to try to speed it up here because there are some other slides I want to try to get to if we can, but if not, that's fine too. All right, so this is another one. You can see the highlighted sentence there where it says the Jews of Portugal are very dark. And you know, especially when you're dealing with family or friends, or you're trying to share this with with folks at work. The point is that you can actually give them enough references so that the discussion as to the color of the Portuguese Jews and Spanish Jews should be like a non-issue. Like you can give them 10 references, you can give them 20 references. If they want 30, you can give them 30. I believe I stopped counting after a certain point, but like I said before, I think I have 100. But you have plenty of references to share. If they keep asking for more. All right, okay, well, what else you got? All right, what else you got? And now this one is a good one. This one, I wish I took a bigger screenshot of more of the sentence here. But this is by John Mackey, and this book came out in the 1700s, and he's describing a head of state. And as he's describing him, he says, he had also the exterior air of business and application enough to make himself capable. In his habit and manners, very formal, a tall, thin, very black man, like a Spaniard or a Jew, about 50 years old. And the example that I gave is like when you watch the 5 o'clock news or whatever o'clock news you watch, if you walk in a room and they start off the news segment by saying, a tall, thin, very black man. Wanted. 6 foot, right? The last thing that pops in your mind is a Spaniard or a Jew. But back in the day, what popped up in their mind was a Spaniard or a Jew, right? Again, who's that guy? Right? According to all these references, who's that guy? Right? But I mean, we've known, if you've watched movies, you go into movies nowadays, there's, I think we watched one about Africa, and we were hard pressed to even find an African, like an actual African. Everybody was Europeans or something like that. But it's a color, I call it a color cover-up. And you can see that they're a little bit upset of the color cover-up. And they should be. And so what is the color cover-up? Well, like I was saying before, people will never tell you that the Jews in Spain and Portugal are black. I say are black because they're still black today. But the way they get around it is that whenever they look back in history and they start telling you about what happened in 1492 and what happened in 1515, anytime they come across a person of color, they'll call them an African. Oh, look at that. Yeah, these Africans were persecuted in 1550. These Africans have a mass grave site in Lisbon during the time when the Jews were persecuted. These Africans. But that's actually part of the cover-up. And you'll see that if they keep doing that, they start to run into problems. Because, of course, one lie will have to lead to another lie, which have to lead to another lie. And just to give you an example, like if you go to Portugal today, you got enough money, you go to Portugal, you get a plane, and you guys are taking in the sights. One of the sites you may want to check out is Mocambo. So it's a neighborhood in Lisbon, Mocambo. And they'll tell you, if you got a good tour guide, he'll tell you up front, like, yeah, this is the quarter. Let me see if I can pick it out. 15th century. So in 1400s, this was a black neighborhood. Black folks live in it, Mocambo. Let's see, the neighborhood from Mocambo, for example, now referred to as Madrigal, serve as a place of extreme duress and sacred assembly. In Mocambo, slave owners were often negligent in their human chattel, who after dying were left to rot on the streets, causing significant sanitation and public health concerns. So this is a recent article, right? And this is where it gets interesting. It says, so as a result, in 1515, King Emmanuel ordered that a massive burial site, and he gives the name of it, Poco dos Negros. I think some folks call it the street of the Negroes well. But the point is that, present day they call this was an African site, right? Mocambo, African site. But there's a problem with that because in history I call them bad boys. There are three kings that as you come into the truth as to who you are, there are three kings you definitely want to get familiar with. I call them bad boys. So if you know Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, they're actually coming out, I think they're working on Bad Boys 3 right now. Here. Oh, in Atlanta? All right, we're here in Atlanta. So Bad Boys 3, ironically enough, there are three kings. Bad Boys 3. The first of the Bad Boys is King John II. So King John II, he was there, in 1492. And that's where, we were talking about the Jews being expelled from Spain. They came into Portugal. So King John II, or I call him KJ2. KJ2 sitting there waiting on them to come. And they come to KJ2 and, he imposes a tax on them. He says, if you guys want to come in, everybody has to pay, 8 pieces of gold, 6 pieces of gold. So, and you can only stay for 6 to 5 months. He gave them a time frame. And then eventually, like I said, if we have time, you'll see that what KJ2 did was, as time elapsed, he took the children from their parents. So, and this is where it really goes from bad to worse. So they separated the children from the parents and started sending Jews to the west coast of Africa. KJ2. King Emmanuel I follows KJ2. So King Emmanuel I, he's a little more lenient towards the Jews at the time. He didn't really agree with KJ2 at first. And then, the royals of Spain, I don't know what's up in Spain, but they had it out for the Jews. So they saw all these Jews going over to Portugal. They weren't going to let that slide. So they talked to King Emmanuel and proposed a wedding. It's like, you want to marry my daughter? Let's hook up our two kingdoms. And King Emmanuel was all for it, but they said, but there's a stipulation. If you want to marry my daughter, those people that are over there, you got to get rid of them. So that was part of the marriage agreement. So after that, King Emmanuel reintroduced some of the wicked stuff of KJ2. And so after King Emmanuel I, then KJ3 comes along. And I believe we have a reference that talks about KJ3, so you can read it for yourself, that KJ3 was just as bad as all of them. But during each of those three kings, you could say thousands, if not millions, of Jews, of our brothers and sisters died. And we have no clue about that. And Mocambo is important because you'll see that it was Emmanuel I in 1515, he orders a mass gravesite erected. And this is where it gets kind of weird, because if you're saying that they're Africans, then you'll start to have problems. And it says, so in 1515, King Emmanuel ordered the opening of a burial grave to combat the health, and we read that, caused by rotting African corpses abandoned in various places. the king's description of the African burials in Lisbon. So we're talking about Lisbon, 1515, right? And then, it kind of goes on there. It says, and it's reading a quote here. They're piecemealing it. It says, we are informed that the slaves that die in the city brought from Guinea, not buried as well they should be. And, it kind of goes all the way down there to where you see footnote 14. And it says, by the 18th century, Lisbon's Macambo burial pit was gone. So this is a neighborhood, right? This is the Macambo neighborhood. And there's a mass grave site in the middle of the Macambo neighborhood. Just to reiterate, they're saying that this was an African site. Keep reading. The neighborhood's other streets named after Jews. Okay. So we start seeing things about Jews start popping up. That's not the only thing. Because the thing about Macambo, and they'll tell you that Macambo is the Macambo of the west coast of Africa. But it was known that the Macambo of the west coast of Africa, if you read it there, it says Movambo. They switched the V with the C. It says Movambo, Macambo, or Uvambo are known to Europeans as black Jews. So just by them using the name Macambo, they're referring to Jews. In Macambo itself, there are streets that are named after Jews. During the time of King Emmanuel I, where the Jews were being killed, they're saying that it's a African gravesite. But again, it gets difficult for folks to hide the truth. And I brought this out at PASOC, so those at PASOC you may have already known. But what you may not know is that in Spain, Portugal, and other parts of Europe, where the Jews were told to live, they had a name for it, right? So let's keep track. So we're tracking all dark complexion, all black people, always dark, always black. So now we're going to look where all these always dark, always black people lived. And let's take a look at ghettos. It says Jews lived in ghettos. And let's take a look at the Webster Dictionary. So Webster says, ghetto, a quarter of a city in which Jews were formerly required to live.
Wait a minute. Get out of here. Play that back.
A quarter of the city in which Jews were formerly required to live.
And this is in the Webster Dictionary.
Webster Dictionary. Webster Dictionary. So before there was a ghetto in New York, before there was a ghetto in Harlem, there were ghettos over in Spain and Portugal. And like I said, I always like to cross-check my references. So that's Webster, so that's a really good reference. But if we keep going, it says, this is from the etymology of words and stuff, and it says 1610s, part of a city, ghetto, part of a city in which the Jews were compelled to live. Same here, where it says Venice, I'm sorry, I gotta use my clicker here. Venice, imitating the odious measures of the German cities, assigned the Jews a special quarter, ghetto. In this book, so that's from 1901. And for this one, I just want you to see that the ghettos existed in Portugal as well, but they called it a different name. And it says, we discussed several such cases in detail in chapter 7, including that the recognition of a part of Castile de Vid, Portugal, as the former Jewish ghetto, Juderia. So in Portugal, they call the ghettos Juderia. And actually, if you go to Portugal today, you'll see an area that's literally marked Juderia, which means ghetto. And then last but not least, I believe this is the last one we have here. So if we're keeping track, we have all dark complexion people that are living in ghettos. And it says, these Judaias were closed every evening when the bells sounded for prayer, and were guarded by 2 watchmen appointed by the king. Any Jew found outside of Judea after the first 3 tolls of the bells was fined 10 liveries, or according to an order of King Dom Pedro, was whipped through the city. In case of repetition of the offense, punished with confiscation of his property. So in other words, if they kept finding him outside the ghetto, after that bell tolled, they was going to take his property. Let's keep reading though. It says, in Italy, the first ghetto in which the Jews were forced to live was established in Venice. Let's see, March 1516 on the island of Lunga Spina. The celebrated ghetto of Rome, so even Rome has ghettos, possibly the worst and most noisome of all, was established in 1556 by Pope Paul. Okay?
Did that say the most noise? The most noise?
Noisome. All right, so like I said, the point of reading these references is just to show you where the Jews lived. They lived in ghettos. They actually called them ghettos. Before the transatlantic slave trade, before there's any ghettos in the States, there was ghettos in Spain and Portugal, where you had an all-black people. And you brought this out as well, the name for the Portuguese Jews. This is important. So if you look at the word Negro, and you can do this at home, if you go to the Webster Dictionary, it'll tell you, Negro, a member of a race of mankind native to Africa and classified according to the physical features. In other words, Negro means an African. But the problem with that is if you keep reading the Webster Dictionary, it'll tell you when it started to mean an African. 1555. So from 1555 all the way to present day, the word Negro meant African. But the question is, what did Negro mean before 1550 or 1555? So if you look at the etymology of the word Negro, and these are boxes, I guess you're going, if you start at the bottom, Negro, 1550s, member of a black skin race of Africa. Right? But then you look at the box above it, so before it meant an African, it meant Negro, Portuguese, black. So Negro, Portuguese, black. So let's take a look into that, and I just kind of threw a timeline up just so that you can see from 1555 we know about the word Negro, it means African, but before that we don't know necessarily what it means. And another thing that I kind of throw out there too is that like this reference is from 1818, but you have to know that the Jews weren't always called Jews, especially in Portugal. Like they couldn't be called Jews in Portugal because it says in Portugal the name of a Jew is a term of such high reproach. Let me start again. In Portugal, the name of a Jew is a term of such high reproach that the government found it necessary to enact a law. And it says, which forbid any person to call another by that application. So the government threw a law that said, you guys can't call another person a Jew. And there were punishments for it. It says, if a man who is styled a Jew, or if a man who is called a Jew, to his face stabs the offender, what, you call me a Jew? It says the law does not condemn the person, right, for retaliating. It says, and trifling as this regulation may appear, it has produced beneficial effects. So in other words, they weren't running around calling each other Jews in Portugal. So the question is, well, what were they calling the Jews in Portugal? All right, so remember, when we looked at at the etymology of the word Negro, we saw in 1550 or 1555, down to present day, Negro meant African. But before 1500, or before 1550, it meant something else. So here it says King John in 1492. So we're before 1550, right? 1492, let's read it. It says, in 1492, expelled the Jews to the island of St. Thomas. So he sent the Jews to the west coast of Africa. And it says, which had been discovered in 1471, all right, and to other Portuguese settlements on the continent of Africa. So again, Jews were sent to Africa. And it says, and from these banished Jews, so talking about the Jews that were kicked out, the black Portuguese, as they are called. So I tell folks is that the Jews were called black Portuguese, right? Black Portuguese, but then the Portuguese word for black is Negro. See? Negro, Portuguese, black. Negro, Portuguese, black.
I have a question.
Yes.
If I recall correctly,
I'm trying to get the microphone to you.
that was if I recall correctly, I seen a documentary on the Black Portuguese and with the narrative of Olaudah Equiano, where he talked about I think he mentioned Florida Shaw, and she was the one that changed certain names and things like that, and then she went with this narrative of the Negro, which simply meant black. So that reminded me of that when you told me about that. I wouldn't say that.
Yeah, any other questions? I know I'm kind of rattling through here. I'm just trying to get to a certain point, but yeah, feel free to stop me if you have any questions. And I gotta blow my nose here in a moment. All right, so let's just keep clicking through here. So I had it, cover up Portuguese Jews expelled from Europe, ? And for this one, actually, yeah, brother, you had a question? Bring it to them. While you ask your question, I'm going to bring up the video on the slide.
Do you have any pictures of King Herod? Look up King Herod's coins. His pictures on his coin.
That's a good question.
The reason why I bring that up is because there are pictures of the original slave traders who called themselves Jews. And they are very similar in appearance to King Herod's coins.
Good to know. All right, so the question on the table right now is, so where were these Jews sent? Like where did they go? So they were all black people, dark complexion. Where did they go? So this is where I was saying before, where if you were to ask a, let's see, what do I do with that slide here? Okay, just for a moment. And I may have to adjust the volume here, so just bear with me. What we're going to take a look at is let's see, 1730. All right. There we go. All right, so this is that class I was telling you about before, where professors going into the history, right, and he's going to tell you what they're going to review in the class. And let's listen to what the professor says. Where the Jews were expelled. Let's see if we can hear it. We may have to adjust the sound. Let's see if we can hear it.
Jewish Islamization that we will be exploring. The plans for the spring, of course, are going to be quite different because then we'll be looking at the Sephardic Jews in exile as they were dispersed from the Iberian Peninsula throughout the Mediterranean basin into Central Asia in some cases, and then, of course, up into Northern Europe, places like Amsterdam where they had a huge impact, people like Spinoza and so on, and also out to the New World. We'll look at crypto-Jews, we'll look at the Jews of New Mexico, and all kinds of fascinating consequences of this 500 years ago event. So that's basically what we're planning to do for the entire academic year.
All right, so for the entire academic year, they're going to review the dispersion of the Sephardic Jews. But notice, he mentioned everywhere, he mentioned they were going to, the Americas, the New World, up into all these northern European places. Not one time did he mention Africa, right? Not one time did he mention Africa. But again, like I said, if you go to the old references, let's just read a few, some of the information here. It says, all the Jewish children below 14 years of age were torn from their parents' arms, dragged into the church, baptized. And what we're doing is that we're picking up the time period of King John II. So KJ2, this is bad boy number 1, KJ2. The Jews had just been expelled from Spain, came into Portugal, and time has elapsed. So it's time for the Jews to get out. They haven't gotten out. So now they're going to start separating the children from the parents. So during this time, we see that they start separating the children into groups. So it says, all the Jewish children between 14 years of age were torn from the parents' arms. So everyone 14 years and younger were taken. Then it says, dragged into the church, baptized. And then we're going into groups. It says, those under 3 years of age were given to Christians to receive a Christian education, or in other words, to be raised as slaves. Okay? Question. Don't answer. Don't answer. Question. When they took these children, gave them to the Christians to be raised as slaves, or to be brought up in the Christian religion, what was the name of the parents? Like there's a term. What was it? Oh, well, let me show you. You ever heard of the term godparents? Do you know where it came from? Did you know that? So back during this time, the term godparent wasn't a good term for us. It wasn't a good term for us. So you can imagine, in Portugal, you know, when these 3-year-olds were taken from their parents, they were giving them to godparents. They were giving them to godparents. And one of the things that I do also try to relate, I know Moray Johnson is going to go into it in the Reclaiming the Throne movie. And that is like, this was a big event. Like, you try to separate a child from one parent. That's huge. But like, this was like thousands of people in a single day. So it was totally bananas during this time. You know, you have people coming up, and some of the references say that they separated. They used clubs to do it. So you can imagine it was a violent affair, knocking folks out, parents fighting, kids yelling, "Mama!" You know, right? And then finally dragged them to the ships, and then the doors on the ships closed, and the ships taken off, and the parents taken off and running after the ships. This was like, everybody was talking about this. Like, you remember what KJ2 did to those Jews? This was a big event. And this is one of those things that nobody really talks about. Like, you go, you know, you have to read this for yourself. But just to show you that, so the 3-year-olds were taken, given to godparents to raise them. And this is in Portugal, and it says, in other words, to be raised as slaves. So in Portugal, there's a group of people, black people, that are being raised up to be slaves in Portugal. And then, if we keep reading, it says, received a Christian education, raised as slaves. It says, those between 3 and 10 years were put on board of ships, conveyed to the newly discovered unwholesome island of St. Thomas. So now we're sending children out to the west coast of Africa. And again, you know, I try to get people into the mindset of, you're sending kids with strangers for them to raise them to another country, right? That may not like it. This was a very bad time. And of course it says, you know, those between 10 and 14 years of age were sold as slaves. So again, this is just before the transatlantic slave trade is getting ready to start. So just before the transatlantic slave trade, we're starting to build up a group of slaves. We're starting to build up a group of slaves in the Iberian Peninsula. And in some of these other references, you'll see that there's some slaves being built up on the west coast of Africa before the transatlantic slave trade starts. Like, this was a very bad event. But like I said, the whole reason why we're going to these references, I want you to see that the Jews fled into Africa. You know, you read the old references, it'll say the northern coast of Africa and the inhabitable regions inland were full of Jews of Spanish descent. They had congregated there in great numbers from the persecution of 1391 into their total expulsion. So according to the old references, they were fleeing into Africa, and they were there in great numbers. But how come that's not being taught in the present-day schools? And I think this is the last one on this topic. I really didn't want to go too deep into that because, like I said, it can be a bit depressing if you do. But I pointed this out before. A lot of the history of our people, it is captured in books. The way they keep it out of mainstream is that they'll run up the price on these books very high so that you can't get it. So $65,000. If you got $65,000, you can buy that book today. Oh, you got 65, sister? Oh, go back one slide. So $65,000 book. After Shabbat, I'm gonna leave a little, if you want to donate towards 65. No. But this is the book. It's one of those rare books. It's actually one of those books again you can find in seminary schools. It's in seminary schools. Yeah. And why is this book worth $65,000? I can tell you it's not because of just one page, because what we're going to do is that we're just going to look at page 574. But I can tell you there's some other stuff in this book, other than this page, which is why it's $65,000. Like, I think, if I remember correctly, in this book, it actually gets into the numbers of those that were killed. Like when the transatlantic slave trade started, and the conquerors, discoverers showed up, they had a paper. It was called the Requirementa. And this is something that you can verify today. Go and look up the Requirementa. And it's funny because it's one of the things that you can find very easily if you just type in Requirementa. Boom. It'll just give you a bunch of hits back. But what the Requirementa was that, so the Pope gave authorization for the conquest of the New World. So they took the Pope's authorization and they go off, and by law what they had to do, every time that they stepped foot on the New World, they had to read that Requirementa to the natives. They don't tell you that. They tell you, they give you the last part of the story, which is, yeah, we showed up and those natives just went crazy. They started shooting arrows and stuff at us. But they don't tell you that when they got off the boat. They rolled out that Requirementa, and if you read it, it starts off a little light, hey, we're here, the Pope authorized, he gave you your land to me. If you want to keep it, become a Christian. But if not, then they're gonna kill all y'all and make you a slave. All your riches and your possessions belong to me. So what do you say? And that's when things went down. And most high willing, in the next video or the video after that, we will get into the Requirementa, because it'll just change your view of the conquest of the new worlds. It's like require, R-E. Yeah, it just has an E on it. It just has an E on it. I mean, and Google will help you out too. Oh, which one? Yeah, it's by John. I think John Ogilvy is the author. You can see it there, written in 1670, and it's America being an accurate description of the New World. And that whole top of the page is like the title. It's a super long page, long title.
Are there PDFs downloaded?
Are there PDFs?
Yes,
Yes, that's the only reason why I got it.
Okay, cool.
I'm not sitting on 65.
Right.
My wife wouldn't let me buy a book for $65,000.
Well, I wouldn't either.
When you said the Requirementa and how they would step foot onto the shores and read that, I'm like, what came to my mind was me and my son, we watched like The Avengers. When Thanos' little witch or whatever, he went forth, he would like tell them like your meaningless lives are being given to Thanos for whatever reason, because he basically like owns you. That reminds me of the Requirementa and how he would like declare that and then kill everybody.
Wow.
Yeah, you won't find Requirementa in any history books. I mean, as far as being what's taught in the classrooms, because it casts a very dark shadow on the conquest of the new world.
You can find a lot of the books that you have on here you can find a lot of the books at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. So if you do go on a trip, go to the library and you'll be able to take pictures and stuff like that.
That's right, because I mean, I know in some places in the Library of Congress, they do got those signs that say don't take pictures. Yeah, you do a real slick. Take your chances. Take your chances if you want to. But you're right though, because I think there was a sister. She lives in Washington D.C. and she puts videos. And this was one of the books she checked out. Or you talking about? Yeah. And I was watching. I was like, turn to page 574. Come on, sis. She never went there. She was looking at the pictures of the Indians instead. All right, so, but, you know, just a point on this book, we're just going to look at a section on page 574. And it says, only reason why I'm picking it up mid-sentence is because it's very, I call it wordy, you know. But that King John III, so this is bad boy number 3, KJ3, of King of Portugal, sent a colony thither above 200 years before, whom though the unwholesome air destroyed, yet the place was not left desolate, for he sent new inhabitants, who first settled Guinea, west coast of Africa, next in Angola, west coast of Africa, and lastly on the island of St. Thomas, west coast of Africa, that so they might be better used to the air, that the said king sold all those Jews for slaves, that refused to embrace the Roman religion, and caused their children to be baptized, from whom, these children, coming thither in great numbers, most of the present inhabitants were descended. So basically what this reference shows us is that King John III, like I said, bad boy number 3, sent some Jews to the west coast of Africa. And it wasn't just a few. I mean, you'll see reference after reference after reference. It'll say great numbers, great numbers, great numbers. And the point is that there were a lot of Jews, black Jews, sent to the west coast of Africa less than 10 years before the transatlantic slave trade started. So KJ3, I want to say he was around during like the 1530s and stuff like that, because he was the one that also introduced the Inquisition into Portugal. Emmanuel I asked for it. He requested from the Pope. He's like, hey, can you start up your thing here? And the Pope refused it until KJ3 got him. All right. Name tags. All right, so name tags, this goes into someone pretending to be you. So let's say, for instance, my name is Johnson. My last name is Johnson. I got my house. And I go off on vacation. I leave my Johnson household. And then this dude named Smith comes in. So I come in, I open my door, and there's a dude named Smith. I say, hey, you've reached the Smith residence. It's like, no, that house belongs to Johnson. Well, prove it. The mailbox has Johnson on it. The welcome mat has Johnson on it. The robe you got on got Johnson on it. Well, how did that get there? Oh, that's weird. Well, what you'll find is that because they're trying to, because there's a cover, I call it a cover, because folks won't admit certain things today. Like I said, if you look at the old references, they will tell you straight up. But today they won't admit it. But when you start to look at certain things, you start to see name tags pop up. What I mean by that is, like, for example, when the Jews were over in Spain and then they came over to Portugal, the references talked about when they came over, they brought a plague with them. So they named the plague after them. What was the name of the plague? Black Plague. Black Death. So, but of course the Portuguese word for black is Negro or nigger. So here, the Jews came in, they named a plague. Brother, you have a question?
No, it's Ebola.
Ebola. Okay. All right. All right. So Jews come in. Jews left Spain, coming to Portugal. They had a plague with them. They called it Black Death, right? Black Plague. That's interesting. And then, so when they came over and they tried to persecute the Jews that were in Portugal. We just saw that they were kicked out of Portugal, taken over to the west coast of Africa, some of them. And then those that stayed, became Christians. You call them new Christians. And so they started up the Inquisition to persecute those that were still in Portugal. And the Inquisition had a book. I mean, it was literally a book that told you what the crimes were and how to punish them and what to do about it. And the book, of course, it had many names, but one of the names of the books was Black Book. So we got a plague, Black Plague. We got a book, Black Book. And then the Inquisition was accused for murdering a bunch of people, and they denied it. It's like, no, we didn't kill anybody. And they had a phrase for that. You're talking about a black legend. So when they denied the Inquisition, they called it a black legend. And then the Inquisition and the expulsion edict resulted in lots of people getting killed, unfortunately. So we have mass graves. But when you look at the graves, they're black graves. They're graves full of black people. And of course, we read, like we read earlier, and the Jews were black Jews, the black Jews of Portugal. And this is what I mean when I say that you start to see black, negro on almost everything. Everything that occurred that's related to the Jews. You start to see either negro or negra, either one of the two. And of course, they'll say that the Jews lived in ghettos, too. And that's also associated with the so-called African American. All right. So, I'm not sure how we're doing with time. Well, we're good? About 5 minutes? Okay. I didn't bring my, where's my, bear with me just for a second, let's grab my Bible. We're going to close this out. And, we mentioned Ezekiel 37. Thank you, brother, for that. And this was one of the scriptures we were referring to when we said that, all right, so you're new to the faith, you want to run out there and tell your families, hey, we are Israel, we are the people. And so you start sharing all these different scriptures, and maybe they don't fully buy in, but if they're still curious, you can take them to some of these references to show them that, hey, this is not me saying it, they said it, right? And that's the whole point of bringing these references up, because maybe they won't believe you, but maybe they'll believe these references. But let's see if I'm just going to read Ezekiel 37. Bear with me just for a second. Okay, and if you want to follow along, Ezekiel chapter 37. And it says, the hand of Yah was upon me and carried me out in the spirit of Yah, and set me down in the midst of the valley which was full of bones, and caused me to pass by them round about. And behold, there were very many in the open valley, and lo, they were very dry. And he said unto me, Son of man, can these bones live? And I answered, O Yah, thou knowest. Again he said unto me, prophesy unto these bones, and say unto them, O you dry bones, hear the word of Yah. Thus says Yah unto these bones, behold, I will cause breath to enter into you, and you shall live. And I will lay sinews upon you, and will bring up flesh upon you, and cover you up with skin, and put breath in you, and you shall live. And you shall know that I am Yahuwah. So I prophesied as I was commanded, and as I prophesied, there was a noise, and behold, a shaking, and the bones came together, and bone to his bone. And when I beheld, lo, the sinew and the flesh came upon them, and the skin covered them above, but there was no breath in them. Then said he unto me, prophesy unto the wind, prophesy, son of man, and say unto the wind, thus saith Yahuwah, come from the four winds, O breath, and breathe upon these slain, that they may live. So I prophesied as I was commanded, as he commanded me, and breath came into them. And they lived, and they stood up upon their feet, an exceeding great army. Then he said unto me, Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. Behold, they say our bones are dry, and our hope is lost. We are cut off for our parts. Therefore prophesy and say unto them, thus say Yahuwah, behold, O my people, I will open your graves and cause you to come up out of your graves and bring you into the land of Israel. And you shall know that I am Yahuwah, that I, Yahuwah, I have opened your graves, O my people, and brought you up out of your graves, and shall put my spirit in you, and you shall live. And I shall place you in your own land, and then shall you know that I, Yah, have spoken it and performed it, said Yahuwah. The word of Yahuwah came again unto me, saying, moreover, son of man, take thee one stick and write upon it for Yehuda, and for the children of Israel, his companions. And then take another stick, and write upon it yourself the stick of Ephraim, and for all his house of Israel, his companions. And join them one to another into one stick. They shall become one in thine hand. And when the children of Israel of thy people shall speak unto thee, saying, Wilt thou now show us what thou meanest by these? Say unto them, Thus say Yahuwah, Behold, I will take the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel, his fellows, and put them with him, even with the stick of Judah, of Yehudah. Make them one stick, and they shall be one in thine hand. And the sticks whereon thou writest shall be in thine hand before their eyes. And say unto them, Thus saith Yahuwah, Behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen, whither they be gone, and will gather them on every side, and bring them into their own land. And I will make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel. And one king shall be king to them all. And they shall be no more two nations, neither shall they be divided into two kingdoms anymore. Neither shall they defile themselves anymore with their idols, nor their detestable things, nor with their transgressions. But I will save them out of all their dwelling places, wherein they have sinned, and will cleanse them, and they shall be my people, and I shall be their Elohim. And David, my servant, shall be king over them. And they shall have one shepherd, and they shall also walk in my judgments, observe my statutes, and do them. And they shall dwell in the land that I have given unto Jacob my servant, wherein your fathers have dwelt. They shall dwell therein, even they and their children and their children's children, forever. And my servant David shall be their prince forever. Moreover, I will make a new covenant of peace with them. It shall be an everlasting covenant with them. I will place them and multiply them, and will set my sanctuary in the midst of them forever or evermore. My tabernacle also shall be with them. Yea, I will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And the heathen shall know that I, Yahuwah, do sanctify Israel, when my sanctuary shall be in the midst of them forevermore. Hallelujah. Praise God.
Hallelujah. How many feel more competent in being able to present new information to family members? We have the scripture, but we also have external sources or extra biblical sources, and all that does is confirm the scripture, right? The truth is the truth, whether you believe it or not. And the Most High will never ever leave himself without a witness. But we still have to dig and search. The scripture says that it's the glory of Elohim to conceal a thing, but it's the honor of a king to search out a matter. So we're searching out those matters, proving what's already in our heart. How many got that witness in their spirit, family? Yes. Hallelujah. All right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to close, and we're going to pray out. Do we have anyone that have any comments, any questions, anything that stood out to you from our brother Benea's presentation? Anything anyone wanted to share?
I wanted to point out that I'm in high school and I take world history right now. And my teacher, he actually said the same thing that you just said about the Black Plague. He was saying like the Jews, they persecuted the Jews for the Black Plague. And I was looking, I was like, wasn't that us? I was like, were we over there during that time? And then he was also talking about how the Black Plague, you guys know the song Ring Around the Rosies? Yeah. That came from that. It goes ring around the rosies, which means the priest around the people that's sick. Pocket full of posies because they had to carry flowers to, drown out the smell of death. Mm-hmm. Ashes, ashes because they burned the bodies, and they all fall down because they all died in big masses. And I was like, kids need to stop singing that song. And because that's how it would go. We would go round the rosy, then we fall down. It's a death song. And also, he gave us another assignment about Arabs. And he had a picture, and he was explaining that they had played chess and everything. And I saw 2 males, darker than I am, playing chess. And I was like, wow. And the kids in my school, they don't pay attention. I'm just like, how do you not know this? It's right there in front of your face. And he has books and everything. It's just...
Wow, our enemy is definitely clever. He convinces us to participate, to sing about our own extermination. Like we're the only people that denigrate one another, make CDs about killing one another, dance to it, degrade our women, and think that that is the right thing to do. But thank the Most High for awakening. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Anyone else? Thank you for sharing that. My daughter and son will not be singing no ring around no roses. Not that they did anyway, but having that understanding is a blessing. Anyone else? Anything they want to share? I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up in a minute, family.
I appreciate, brother, you bringing that. I love to study history. I know a lot of stuff about a lot of stuff. A lot of people are like, wow, how'd you know all that stuff? I don't know none of that stuff you was talking about. So that was profound. I really appreciate that. But in the end, the Igbos, the tribe we were primarily taken from, they're still known as the Jews of Nigeria. And they were persecuted even after we were taken from them. They were attacked twice and had a big famine that was purposely caused to try to completely wipe them out. So it's not, we are here suffering that, but even the part of us that was left there in what's now called Nigeria suffered greatly from persecution. It just makes no sense, other than in the spiritual sense, why we have been targeted so much. But they recognize the presence of the Most High on us more than we recognize.
You know, they're still suffering and we're still suffering today. I never understood why they hated us so much until you were able to put things in context. Context is really, really important, family. So if that's all, let us go ahead and stand, family. As a mishpachah, we're going to turn and bow our heads to our Elohim. Ask that he will cover us, ask that he will remember us as we go on our separate ways in life. Moreh Amir always stresses that fellowship is really, really important. As we begin to come back into the bond of the covenant and we establish community, it's always good to look a brother in the eye, shake his hand, hug a sister, show some love, because when it's all said and done, family, we're going to need one another. We are all that we have. And if we don't show that one love, then who is? The scripture says that by this all men will know that you are my disciples if you what? Show love. Not if you speak the language, not if you have on garments. It's showing love, and that's what's going to draw people. He said, if I be lifted up, I will draw all men unto me. So I know it's a lot of us that want to draw our family members. Draw them with love. Don't try to show them that they are wrong and you're right. Add to their faith. Add to it. Present things. Don't try to be elitist with the information, but just share from a clear head and from a good place. Hallelujah. Abba Yah, we bless you. We thank you for all that you've done for us this day. It is the day that you have set apart that is different than any other day. Actually, it is a sign between you and us throughout our generations. So we've come to keep this day set apart, honoring you, asking that your mercy would be upon us. For you said that your mercy endureth forever. And we need your mercy, we need your grace. Not because we want to walk in sin, but we know that your royal law, that righteous standard, is hard sometimes. So Father, where we are insufficient, we ask that you would be sufficient. Where we're void of understanding, Father, please give us wisdom that we might walk upright and please you in all of our ways. As we leave this place but never your presence, go with us, Father. Let us be a light unto the world as you've commanded us. And we'll be ever so mindful to give you all the glory, all the honor. No flesh will glory in your presence. The weight of your glory is too heavy, Father. We can't handle it. So all of our burdens and everything we think that we are, we're going to lay it down at your feet and ask for you to handle it. You know what we're going to face all this week, Father. Handle it. We're going to trust you and believe you. This day, record it for us. In the name of Yahushua HaMashiach, we seal it and we authorize it. And if you agree, shout hallelujah. Hallelujah.